Thank you, Dad, for this privilege, this opportunity to speak before our family, the Rainbow Push Coalition. I want to say congratulations and thank you for a wonderful, successful convention, for all of your participation, sponsorship, donations, and your volunteerism. I'd like to ask that you keep my father, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, in your prayers. This man is a warrior for peace and justice. Oftentimes, people don't know how or what Rainbow Push is or how do we fit in. Is this a church? Should you donate? Can you contribute? Just briefly, you need to go to Sunday school. That's church. You need to go to the main church program. You need inspiration so you can have the good news, so you can be recharged to set your week on the right course, to get the values and the instruction. You need to take your child to school so that they can live a life in God's providence. God does not like ignorance. So you can't be holy and ignorant. The two don't go together. Our God loves education. And then lastly, you need to come to Rainbow Push. You need to be involved in civic action. Expecting God to do everything for you while you do nothing for yourself is foolishness. Now, there are some places in Texas, they got big churches, and they sell the sweet, sweet, sweet word of Jesus. Big words, big promises, and little deeds. We love a God that judges us not by just the bark of the tree, but the fruit that it bears. You got to bear some fruit sometime. But specifically, the message I would like to give with you today, and I'm going to tell you the topic in just one moment, is I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to ask you for your support, your contribution, your donation. We need your support. Many people say, how can I support? Well, we need your support. You see the information on the screen, or you can email us at rainbowpush.org. Your contribution, there's nothing too small. It makes a difference. Many people I know are tied up from their 9 to 5. You work hard, you're working 2 jobs, you've got many things to do, but freedom is worth the sacrifice. And it's not easy coming up here every Saturday having something to say, because some of our people are afraid to talk to power. And have you noticed that the weakest Negroes always say, I wouldn't be involved in civil rights because if they hit me, I'd hit them back. They've been running scared ever since the day they were born, please. Let me not get off my point, because I love my father, because time tested, in season, out of season, he's unwavering, he's unflinching, and if I can just be half the man of him, I know I'll be good. The message I'd like to share with you today is the census question. The census question. And bear with me as I try to tie all of these issues back to the census question. We know we just celebrated our nation's independence from the British colony. Great to see you, Brother Teddy Gilmore. We have to take our nation back to the census question. So July 4th, 1776, you've heard the story, taxation without representation, and we wanted to fight to be a new country. How ironic that as one colony had been overthrown, a new colonial power emerged and started a new form of slavery on the same day. So when Frederick Douglass was asked to come speak July 4th, 1852, to celebrate Independence Day, you do understand that he was in slavery. You do understand he was not regarded as an American citizen. And he asked, how cruel of you. Is this a mockery that you're trying to make of me? To ask me to speak on behalf of your independence, which I do not share because my family and brethren are still enslaved. The census question. I had to try to figure this out because from 1619 to 2019, this is a year, this is a day that we should all be celebrating. We should have a maypole. We should have a focus on what does 400 years in America mean? Why do I need you to tune in and have a civics lesson? Because far too often this was never taught to you. And as we understand by the parade on July 4th, where someone believes that there were airports in Chicago and LaGuardia and Los Angeles that the British Army had overtaken. There are a lot of people that are devoid of history. There were no airports in 16. Moving right along. Give that a pause, man. The President of the United States thinks there was an airport, and worse than getting it wrong, it's the blame shifting and the excuse. I pay very close attention to the blame shifting. When he says it was the teleprompter, he says it was the rain. Why don't you just say I was wrong and don't know and haven't read a book? I'll never forget when they asked him when he was running for president, what's your favorite book? He says, The Art of the Deal. So the reporter came back and says, can you give me another book that you're not selling that you haven't written? He says, I like the Bible. That was interesting. And of course, there are 39 old, 27 new, 40 authors, 3 different languages, 1,500 years. So it's one book, but it's a lot of books in there. So they asked him, well, what's your favorite book in the Bible? And he responded and says, I like the whole Bible. The census question, you can't make it up. 400 years, 1619 to 2019, when the Queen of England stands next to the President of the United States, and they remember D-Day 75 years ago, but make no mention of 400 years, where they have accumulated their wealth, how their wealth was created, how their empires and countries expanded. That is not an omission. That is a deliberate erasure of history. We're not going down like that. This is the best of times, if you ask me, because our people, after 400 years, are coming unto themselves because we're not going backwards and we are gaining knowledge about our history. We know the Portuguese were doing slave trading in the 1500s, and we see the first known ship was a ship called Jesus that left from Portugal to go into West Africa. Now it's 1619, and there in the Atlantic was a slave ship. One was called the White Lion, accompanied by the treasurer. The author wrote that Mr. Captain Jope was given this commission to go and take Portuguese ships from Luanda, Angola, into Veracruz, Mexico. 20 Africans got abducted, taken, that were being sent to Veracruz and ended up in Virginia. Now Jamestown landing in Hampton. I didn't make this up, it's written. Why doesn't our history celebrate, commemorate, honor our own American history? I couldn't help but think about the census when I see these children at the border. What is this about? In the year of 2006, there were more black and brown children under the age of 10 in American public schools than white children. The demographics of the nation are changing its destiny. There are those that are opposing those forces of history and the future. The census question. I said, is this anything new? You've got to go back to the good book. The Bible will give you the answer. I thought about, it's not Christmas time. Why should I mention the birth of Jesus? Because in the birth of Jesus, they had to confront the census question. You do know there were opponents, those that were in opposition to the ministry of Jesus. You know that, right? I know we have him in swaddling clothes and he was a lovely little baby. No. Jesus had opposition. The Pharisees and Sadducees and Essenes, those that were concerned about a man, a child that could heal people and break up our contradiction, that was more concerned about love than law. Jesus had opposition to his ministry. The census question. I just couldn't imagine that someone could be as cruel as King Herod. That here this culture was coming from the east, the Persians and those that have read the Bhagavad Gita. They were bringing these wise men that came through to see King Herod. Here this man had all power, or so he thought. He was afraid of an unborn child. It was his religious leaders that told those wise men that there is a child because the star is over Bethlehem. They went to the child. The census question. It was time for Joseph and Mary and everybody to go to Bethlehem, to go to your residency, to might and be a part of the census. This ties back into Texas. There's nothing new under the sun. It's time for the American census. So what happened with Jesus? After King Herod could not find the child, now we have the word that's been put into English that was infanticide, the killing of children. Dad, I had to stop and research, is this such a complex? Is this for real? There was a king in Jerusalem named King Herod that went out to kill all the babies because he could not find this child. Let's go to the border, Reverend Hall. This man refusing to give a child drinking water. This man that doesn't want human beings to brush their teeth. This man that doesn't want babies to have clean diapers. This man that's separating women from children. You know sex abuse is going to happen. You know children are going to die. You know the children are being traumatized. From King Herod to Trump today, it's the census question. The Constitution makes it clear. You count everybody. This has to deal with the allocation of resources for roads, for bridges, for schools, for health. You count everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, he cannot concede on this issue. His supporters are playing the long game. I'm glad you asked, what is the long game? They want to make sure that they have access to the Supreme Court because we're still living with the laws that were put on the Supreme Court's book in 1776. They're playing the long game because they want the appellate courts to have been stacked with the persons on their judicial choices and prerogatives. They are playing the long game to figure out where the redistricting, the gerrymandering, the reapportionment of power is going to go. They're playing the long game. They will suffer a fool for a night because they want the long game. They've got their eyes set on the long term. The president will be gone in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. A Supreme Court appointment is a lifetime. It's the census questions, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about those slave ships that came to Jamestown. Unless we really get this in our heads, our children are lost. Just a few blocks from my house this past weekend on July 4th, why would 5 young black children get shot less than a half mile from my house? Why would 36 children and young adults get shot in the city of Chicago and 5 killed? Why? Because they're lost. If they really understood that Frederick Douglass at 8 years old went to New Jersey and started working in abolition and saved his money and bought a book and had to write on a brick wall because he didn't have enough money for crayons, didn't have enough money for chalk. This is where he learned to read. He had to con and bribe children to teach him to read. But once you teach a man to read, you can never stop him from learning. Frederick Douglass in 1852, this is what I don't understand about some of my people sometimes. And this is one of the problems I have with being raised by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I've been raised by a man amongst men, so I don't understand a man that doesn't have any testicular fortitude, has no guts, that won't speak up. I don't understand that. I just think all men have something that they're willing to fight for, stand for, be about, pick your head up. I don't understand a man that won't stand up for his own children. I don't understand a man that has his head down. I don't understand a man that can't get mad about injustice. I don't understand a man that would put more money in his car than his children's education. I don't understand a man that won't sacrifice his life for his own child. You made it rough, Dad. But for the men that do, I admire and love and respect and appreciate you. It was on this day, July 6, 1944, long before you know this man, Jack Roosevelt Robinson, also affectionately known as Jackie Robinson. It was on this day that a man in the military from Pasadena, California, was in Fort Hood, Texas, and was told, niggas get to the back of the bus. The military had already been desegregated. He wouldn't move while he was with his companion and colleague. They arrested him and court-martialed him. Look at the charges they gave him, Dad. They said this was an uppity Negro. They said he had behavior unbecoming of an officer. They accused him of being drunk. They accused him of being insubordination. That means talking back, y'all. They trumped up 6 charges and took him before the tribunal to court-martial him. Within 20 minutes, all 9 on the panel found this man innocent and of high standards and quality. This is 3 years before he ever played baseball. What am I saying? He was a man in 1944 before he ever played baseball in 1947. You're not going to change and become a man when you go higher. If you got the seeds of a boy in your soul and you ain't willing to stand up, fight back, speak up, talk out. If you're running for office and you can't say anything about the Border Patrol now, when you get to office, you ain't going to change your tune. Where are all of our prominent leaders, all of our elected officials, Republican men, Republican women, those that walk the corridors of power? They stay silent on the border issue. You're prominent. You're but a filthy rag in God's eyesight. If you don't use the power you have to make a difference, and you see these children in cages. We've got a long history of putting children in cages. And when you choose not to see what's before your very eyes, and you wonder why our children are hurting. When I thought about Jesus and the census question, and I thought about the birth of our nation, Dad, on July 4th, 1776, I was reminded of one of my children at birth. One of my children at birth, we're all on Thanksgiving Eve, on Thanksgiving Day, sitting there waiting. God blessed me to have a child. And there was a white fireman, and there was our family. We were all there all morning long waiting for our child in eager and hopeful expectation. This was the first grandchild born on both sides, my wife's family and my family. So we were so excited. And when the child came, we celebrated. I came back to the waiting room and saw the white fireman in there. And he had no joy. And I asked him, how did things go? He says, I lost my child. Having a child is a gift from God. And my heart sunk. And I can still feel what he went through to the best of my ability on that day. My other child, she came out and she's fine. My latter child, he came out, heart was racing, and he's fine. But they had to take him and put him in a little incubator. And I saw the lights flashing. I said, what is this? Because the others came out with ease. And then before I knew it, I heard something about a neonatologist that had to be called. And the person that was the gynecologist that was delivering, they had to call the obstetrician. And I'm like, who are all these people, Dad? A man doesn't have to deal with that. So women's care is something that's separate from men in health care, and discrimination on women in health care is wrong and sexist and racist. When I think of the census question, I think of my child, and I think of where we are as a nation and the birth of our nation. Our nation was born with a deformity. We need a spiritual neonatologist to deal with the issues of a high-risk pregnancy. Having a colony that you create slavery within. How do you get rid of it? Mayor Pete Buttigieg gave one of the most brilliant speeches I've seen in recent days. At our business breakfast, he talked about the power of compounding interest. But he went on to say $1 today at 5% interest at the end of the year is worth $1.05. Compounding interest will end up having that dollar today worth $10 in 10 years. He went on and laid out the science and the math of it that we all know. But then he went on to say if you have a social problem unaddressed, the power of compound interest also affects that. Not only did we lose our wealth, we got wealth taken away from us. The problems we have today are more complicated. So then when you have someone with a low IQ and a small mind, like Senator McConnell, he says that was a long time ago. He can't do calculus, he can't do algebra, I'm sure he can't do arithmetic. It's not that long ago. We still honor treaties that we made 150 years ago. We enforce Supreme Court laws from 150 years ago. We still recognize property rights from 150 years ago. We still honor and recognize securities within corporations from 150 years ago. It's unbroken continuity. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we need a spiritual neonatologist to deal with the original sin of America. When I see our people coming unto themselves, and I see this lynching memorial within Montgomery, Alabama, why do we need it? We need to know our history. Why? Because if you don't know history, you keep reliving the same trauma that was inflicted upon you. Have you ever seen someone here in Chicago that might have had a fender bender on the Dan Ryan and they tell you, I'm not going down the Dan Ryan no more. I'm gonna go up Halsted Street, State Street. I don't go on the expressway. The person was traumatized. Somebody got in a plane and had a little turbulence. I don't fly anymore. I'll never go overseas because I've been traumatized. Some man, he needs, like some people say, as old as he is now, he needs a purse and a nurse. Now he wants to get married. But he says, I can't be in a relationship because you know how women are, and I've been traumatized. You know how women can go and say, I don't deal with no men anymore because I've been traumatized. Well, Reverend T.L. Barrett told me, stop looking for the right woman, just be the right man and it'll work itself out. We've got to go back to the sins of the nation. When I see Lonnie Bunch as the head of the Smithsonian Museum, teaching Americans about our history, when I see this young girl, Corey Goff, she did not defeat Serena Williams. She did not beat the woman that she idolized. She won a game. Serena and Venus will never be defeated. Serena is now 39. This young girl is 15. These women have held the number 1 and number 2 spot for over 25 years. When we start telling our own story, you'll see that an Earl Woods took young Tiger to golf courses he couldn't go to. When you see and we start telling our own stories, you will see a Daddy Jordan take his son Michael to play basketball. You will see a daddy of Kobe Bryant take his own child. You will see Mr. Williams get a tennis book, teach himself, to teach his daughters how to play. But follow this. I've been trying to read up on young Coco Gauff. I can't hardly find any mention of her mother and father and their backgrounds. They want to say the coach did this and the coach did that. This girl's father at 7 years old put a tennis racket in her hand. He is the coach of the youngest player to qualify and win at Wimbledon. Coco Gauff, her mother was a gymnast who ran out of money and couldn't give her daughter everything she wanted, so she went to a less expensive sport to start running track. They moved their family to Florida so they could get the best facilities. They sacrificed for their child. She was homeschooled. No teacher told her what she couldn't be. She was sat up till 11 o'clock the night before she played Wimbledon. And by the way, she only had 2 weeks notice to know she was going to Wimbledon. The teachers and the students didn't even know she was playing tennis. She didn't talk about it. Coco, her father was a basketball player. Her father sacrificed to do everything to travel the world with her. Now we've got a young girl that's on the stage. When she won, she cried because she said, I love you, Serena. Serena said in Venus, this is a fine family. Daddy Williams opened the door for his daughters to let us know we can be self-taught and best taught in one generation. Dad, this young girl, Coco Gauff, says she wanted to use her racket to talk about the violence in the Sudan. Her daddy said he was making her a platform with that racket. She's not just trying to sell boxes of cereals and tennis shoes. She should do all that too, but she wants to make a difference. There's a new generation coming up, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm at the tail end of mine, but I'm so excited about what these young people are doing. And the good news is, we don't need 400 years to catch up. When you level the playing field and you make the rules clear and it's transparent, we can be number 1 in golf, in basketball, baseball, boxing, tennis. Now we're going to open up the doors to the construction and the building trades. Why are there no black firms that are building roads in the state of Illinois? Why are there no heavy equipment company owners in the state of Illinois? Why are there no crane operators in the state of Illinois? Why my brother Ted Gilmore has his restaurant shut down when he wants to service African American customers in the city of Chicago. We don't need 400 years. We're going to fight on.